Nothing too elaborate. Little Elijah Craig.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Just rinsed them out too. Let's do this. Well, good afternoon, Logan.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Ooh, had a hustle there.
How's your week been?
It's been pretty good, actually. I'm trying to think. Nothing eventful, so that usually means good things.
That's good.
So, stopped by the liquor store. Was thrown off a little bit because it's Veterans Day, or as I like to call it, Armistice Day.
Yes, it is.
So they opened late, so I had to stand in line, and there was a line.
A line outside the liquor store. You know America's healthy when that happens.
So here we are.
Well,
Grabbed a little Elijah Craig.
This is great because Kibby was giving me a hard time the other day for making you drink my terrible Washington whiskey and saying that we needed better whiskey on the show. So
that's what motivated me to go into the liquor store today. And I didn't choose the best bourbon in the world, but I do like Elijah Craig.
I like Elijah Craig just fine.
Back to the state of Kentucky. We've been on the Virginia kick for a while.
No problem with it whatsoever.
Let's crack it open now because
let's.
I'm parched. So how's your week been going?
My week's been good. It's been kind of busy, a little bit stressful, but things are coming along. Things are developing, so it's all good. I'm doing National Novel Writing Month this month.
Oh, yeah. So this is a big month for you.
Means I have to write 1,600 words a day, every day this month, and it's a little bit stressful to keep up with. Not that easy to do.
How's are you staying on pace right now?
I'm ahead of schedule at the moment, so I've met or exceeded my target every day, which is the goal. So.
What time do you wake up? Do you start early, or when do you write usually?
I usually write in the evenings after work.
Okay.
Usually, sometimes I'll get an early start if I'm feeling really energetic, but usually I put it off until the end of the day, and then I'm like, I only have 2 hours left to write before midnight. I got to get it done. So.
And how... Okay, so what's your process in the evening? Like 10 o'clock you start? Or how long does it take you typically to write 1,600 words?
About 2 hours maybe, an hour to 2 hours, depending on how much in the zone I am. And yeah, I've been starting at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night lately.
Okay.
But I need to get in the habit of doing it earlier. It's a lot easier if you spread it out over the day and like write 200 words in the morning and 200 in the afternoon, and then you only have a little bit more to do later on. So I need to do that. But I've been bad about it because I've been busy with work and other stuff. And
you might have mentioned this just a minute ago, and I can't remember if I missed it, so I apologize. But how many? This is the 10th time you've done this. How many times have you done this?
This is my 12th year doing this.
Wow.
So it's coming along, I recommend it for any aspiring writers. National Novel Writing Month is great because it keeps you on track. It keeps you motivated to keep going and finish something, which is the hardest part about anything. Any creative endeavor is finishing it.
Now, can you get any of your past novels?
Yeah. They're all, not all of them, but many of them are available on Amazon.com under my name. And I think like 8 of them are up there or something. I have a few that I haven't published yet, but they're all self-published. I'll find a real publisher for them one of these days.
What if you had to recommend one to someone who wants to read a Logan Albright novel? Do you have a favorite that you took the most pride in?
I think my favorite is my longest one is called The Light Fantastic.
I have seen that on Amazon.
That one I like a lot because I don't know how I did it. It's 150,000 words. My novels are usually a lot shorter than that, and somehow I managed to crank out that many words. I have no idea how I did it. I feel like I could never do it now, but at the time didn't have a lot else going on and just feverishly worked on that for a year.
So that one you worked on for over a year?
Not over a year, but
about
close to a year. Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So cheers, sir.
Cheers to you.
Happy Wednesday. I hope this is Kibby approved. At least
I like it. It's good.
Taken a step in the right direction. I like it too. It's one of my favorites. And I wouldn't call myself a schnob, but I'm trying to become a schnob.
You'll get there.
I'd like to be.
It's expensive to be a bourbon snob.
Yes. A couple of Kibby's guests have always commented on his collection sitting over there.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to kind of do some post-election talk today. We talked about the election last week, and now we have a little more certainty of what's happening. And I'm seeing a lot of messages on Facebook and other social media platforms about like unity and we voted in love and now everybody can be united again together. And I'm all for that. I think we should. It's a real problem how divided our country has become. I really wish we could get along with each other in a better way and have relationships with people who don't agree with us politically but not hate each other. But it rings a little hollow to me because these people have spent the last 4 years calling half of the country deplorables and racists and bigots and stuff, and now they're just going to forget that. I don't believe they're going to forget that, and then I don't expect the other people who have been called these names to just forget that and go back to normal, because it's a hard thing to let go. If you know that people hate you that much, and then they say, let's be unified and be one country again, I don't blame people for holding that against them and being resentful about it. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on what's going on there.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I agree with you. I'm drawn to the idea of unity. I want to be unified. I want peace and cooperation.
Yeah.
But it does ring hollow. My wife, every Wednesday, and I went with her today because I was off work, we go to a little farm and we get a half-gallon weekly of raw milk. And on the way to the farm, there's 2 houses. It's in a backcountry roads. It's not a development or neighborhood. One had all the Trump signs out all year, and one had all the Biden signs out. And the Biden one was extra creative, where they would have a lot of homemade signs where it would be like Trump and is Putin's puppet or something, usually something pretty clever. Well, today we drove by. I had yet to see it. My wife just always reported on it to me. They had a big come together sign out. And I was like, there it is.
Right.
Kind of. Like, you spent all 4 years bashing. As soon as he took the oath of office, even before that, you're like, we're going to oppose this. It wasn't that you were going to be pragmatic, take the good policy, reject the bad policy. It was just whatever Trump touches is bad. Everyone that supports him is bad.
Right. Well, I don't even have a problem with them bashing Trump on that kind of stuff. I just think it's the supporters that they go after to say, you can't have voted for Trump unless you're a racist. I hear that a lot. And I'm like, that's just not true. There's lots of people who voted for Trump for various reasons, and they're not all racist. A very small minority of them are racists. And when you just label everybody with that broad brush, I think it really is divisive and hurts people. And I'm glad to see the messages of unity, but it's just hard to believe that they're sincere, especially when you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying that we need to round up or create lists of people who supported Trump and hold them accountable for their complacency, she said, or complicity, I think she said, which I don't know what that means. I don't know what holding them accountable means, but it doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I almost let in with that, but I figured you were going to as well. But yeah, the AOC, we're now going to create lists, but we have to have unity over here. Yeah, lists to me, I hate it. I don't want to use it, but they spent the whole time, Trump's a fascist, the right wing's fascist. That is an overused, bastardized word that has no meaning left. But man, they not apply it with intellectual consistency.
No, not at all.
So it is just, I just saw the other day where, side tangent, what Pompeo, Secretary of State, had kind of a faux pas statement the other day where he got up and said, Trump's, on a press conference, they asked him if he was going to, peacefully work with Biden, the incoming president. He's like, well, we're going to work with Trump, who's going to be taking the second.
Yeah, poor choice of words. About like there will be no peaceful transition or something like that.
He said there'll be a peaceful transition with Trump in his second term.
Yeah,
it was a very poor choice of words. I get what he's doing. He's taking marching orders from the administration. They're contesting the election. Very poor. Very, 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 very poor. But they immediately jumped down, oh, this sounds fascist. I'm going
to go out on a limb and say that I don't think Trump will try to hang on to power after the Electoral College actually votes and after the results have been certified. I think he'll go away and do his billionaire thing. I might be wrong. Maybe he is going to try to do a military coup or something and retain control. And in which case, I'll be right out there with everybody else complaining about it.
Amen.
But I don't think he's going to do that. I just don't buy it.
I think he's going to run again. I really do now.
Really? I hope he doesn't. But
I just think he'll win the primary. He'll be back 2024. It's going to be Trump.
Well, he's
running
against
old Kamala. He'll be as old as Biden is now by a year.
I mean, he's a lot hardier than Biden. That's for sure.
So that's my prediction.
But I've got a lot of friends who disagree with me politically. In fact, I think all my friends disagree with me politically because when you're an anarchist, it's hard to find people who agree with you. And I'm fine with that. I'm happy to be their friend and hang out and talk about non-political things. And but it feels a little scary. It feels a little McCarthyist when you hear about, these lists that we're going to keep of people. And I'm a lot more reticent with my views than I would otherwise be because although I'm not a Trump supporter and never have been, I think people will lump me in with him because I'm a little bit more conservative on some issues than the left is. And I'm not a complete Trump denouncer. I think he did some good things. But I'm concerned that if I go out there and say what I really think, people are going to disown me and unfriend me and think I'm a horrible bigot, which I'm not. But it's a little scary, even though I'm happy to have these relationships with people who disagree with me on very important fundamental things. There's things I feel very strongly about, and I have friends who completely are on the other side. But I recognize that there's other things that are more important than politics, and I'm happy to set those things aside for the sake of friendship. And I wish other people felt that way.
Yeah, that's 100% agree with you. And I would agree with you. The left is going to give this incoming administration all the passes in the world. I saw a few things already what Biden's going to lay out for, his first 100 days or the first, executive orders he's going to sign. And there it is going to be complete. I'm not saying Trump was a bastion of liberty by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a little bit, at least they paid lip service to more of a market approach at times. They at least, said nice things, and maybe they turn around and did something different. But they're just going to plow through and try to get as much done as they can do. They're more aggressive than the Republicans. The Republicans are always, they're afraid to rock the boat. The Democrats have no fear, and they're going to plow through whatever they can, and it's
agree.
It's terrifying.
I agree that the media will definitely give the Biden administration a pass. What do you think about like the Bernie Sanders people, the really far left progressive caucus? Because I've seen a couple people I know saying that they're not going to give Biden a pass and that they want to hold him accountable because they really don't like him for being too centrist for their liking. They want someone who's more far left, and they're really going to go after him. So do you think that all these like super far left progressive socialist types are going to fall in line and just support him, or do you think that there's going to be a resistance movement of people who are upset that he's not far left enough and want to try to push him in that direction, and maybe we continue to see Antifa and BLM get upset about these things?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that they're going to get in line in a way that they're going to stay silent. They're going to be pushing their agenda. They have the radicals on their sides, and by radicals, the folks are going to show up in the streets and, burn things, or at least at minimum hold signs. That's going to put the pressure on the Republicans. They're going to move the box left. The
Overton window?
Yeah, the Overton window is going to be shifted left by those people. Will they be, Biden's the worst? No, I think they still view him as a means to an end. At least that's how I think they'll take it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, because I don't think Biden is all there cognitively. Yeah. I think it's been pretty well demonstrated that he's not. And so I'm not sure how much actual leading he's going to do in the administration as opposed to being directed by staff and by generals and things like that. I hope we see a resurgence of the anti-war movement, which really hasn't been that. We haven't really seen much of an anti-war movement under Trump. I was very alarmed when Obama became president, and under Bush, Code Pink was everywhere. Code Pink was all over the place saying Bush is a war criminal, we got to stop these wars, and Obama took over and, if anything, was more warlike than Bush, but Code Pink just disappeared, gone. And they said nothing when Hillary was running for president, completely quiet. And, I didn't see him much under Trump either, to be honest, although I would have expected to. So I'm really hoping for a resurgence of the anti-war movement, because I think Biden, one of the things he's going to be bad on, of which we can talk about, there's going to be many, one of the things he's going to be bad on is he's going to be a lot more willing to listen to the generals and do more foreign intervention and start more wars, which is really terrible.
Yeah, President Trump was a slight shift in foreign policy to where, from the beginning, he opposed at least the Iraq war. He paid lip service to wanting to get our troops out. He didn't get a ton of that done. He did broker some good meetings in the Middle East that he's gotten credit for, but Biden's definitely going to be a shift back to the Bush-Obama. It's a return to the quotations, the norm, I guess, of the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Since 9/11.
I mean, Trump was by no means great on foreign policy,
No.
and he kept hiring people like John Bolton and making terrible mistakes, but, I think there was a desire there to push back. And it's really hard to push back against the military apparatus. It's not easy to do. And I think he tried to, and I think he largely failed. But at least having that impulse there, I thought, was a positive thing. And that's going to be gone under Biden. He's just going to do what the generals tell him to do, because he's not going to know any better.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw the tweet he put up, something around like America's going to be back in the game when he's talking to him. And I was like, that's code for more war.
Yeah, but we got to get that international respect, Finally, we'll have a president who the international community respects, which everyone keeps talking about. And I don't really understand why that's a good thing. Why does people want a president who, leaders of these terrible countries overseas are going to say, oh, that guy's great, we like him? I don't think international respect is necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, I think I'd be shocked if third world countries are looking at America and what's gone on in our country in 2020 and be like, man, can't wait till they export some democracy over here. I can't see them getting excited right now.
Do you think we need to retire the term third world country as a anachronistic relic of the Cold War?
Ooh, that's I've never even pondered that thought. Give me your thoughts on that.
I was curious. Yeah. This was years ago. Yeah. But I was like, we always hear about third world countries and first world countries, but I've never heard of what a second world country is. So I looked it up, and it was a terminology that came about during the Cold War, and first world countries were the Western capitalist countries, and second world countries were the communist countries, and third world countries were everything else. So, if you're not Russia or Vietnam or China, you're another country in Asia or in Africa, you were a third world country, and that's what the term meant. But now that it's not really broken down along those lines quite so much anymore, I'm not sure the term has any meaning. I guess that the term now means just a poor country.
That's how I use it. But, underdeveloped, poor country, probably has a corrupt political system. Comparatively to America, it's very corrupt. I mean, America is not corrupt compared to these nations. That's how I view it. But that's that's interesting. So hold on, who came up with that? So I imagine the U.S. came up with that because we're first.
I don't know who came up with it.
I don't know. I can't see no Russian over there. Be like, oh, well, that America and the capitalists will be the first world.
I'm sure it was a capitalist nation that came up with we're the first world and they're the second world. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly the origin, but it came about during the Cold War. And I thought it was really interesting because everyone uses third world country just to mean, developing nation, basically. And it really doesn't apply anymore the way it did back then.
How do you think we should? Let's say we're talking about, Syria, Libya, where we brought democracy to them under Obama and Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. What's their appropriate? How should we appropriately describe those wonderful places?
Well, I don't know. I kind of like developing nation. I think it's a little bit not so judgmental as saying third world or poor. It's like, yeah, they're getting there. It'll take them some time, but they'll get developed eventually.
Man, our plan with Syria and Libya, though, I feel like they went the other way.
Yeah, it's not great.
Good job, American government. So, but back to, the overall unity question, I kind of get, right now there's so much controversy where people are adamant somehow this election was stolen. But let's put that on the side and let's assume Biden, I'm sure there was fraud, but we don't need to get into that. How much and how impactful was it? That's the large question. But let's say regardless, not irregardless.
I love the word irregardless.
Oh, you do? The new word.
I like it as a troll word because it just annoys people who are like grammar Nazis. And they're like, that's not a word. And they're like, everyone knows what you mean. Yeah. I've actually become, it's
officially a word now.
This is a really off-topic tangent.
Please.
But I've become very subjectivist when it comes to language. I used to be a lot more prescriptivist when I was first learning how to write and everything. It's like, that's the wrong spelling, that's the wrong usage. And now I'm like, well, as long as people are understanding you, it's fine because there's no central committee of language that decides what's official and what's not official. It's just the way people talk. And if people are talking with a word and you understand it, then it's correct. So people say irregardless and you know what it means, the same way people say flammable, which is not officially a word or wasn't until recently. People know what you mean. So, who's to say that's wrong?
Your anarchy is spreading.
It really is. 'Cause, there's no emperor of English who just decides that's correct and that's incorrect. Dictionaries and grammar guides are supposed to reflect the way people do speak, not the way they should speak.
The dictionary's changing the definitions of words during Amy Coney Barrett's hearing, so...
Yeah, that I don't agree with. And this is that idea that dictionary editors are somehow, in charge of the language.
And also
they get to
pure.
Decide. So pure. That's the argument I have about tomato being a fruit. Everyone says tomato's a fruit. Actually, tomato's a fruit. I'm like, no, it isn't. It isn't a fruit because some botanist has a specialized technical definition that says a tomato is a fruit that also says things like, zucchini is a fruit. That doesn't make it true. It's not the way people use the word fruit in real life. The way people use the word fruit doesn't include tomato in real life. Sorry, doesn't work. I'm not willing to cede the linguistic territory to a specialized scientific field and say that they get to decide how the rest of us have to talk.
So anti-authoritarian. I love it. I'm drawn to it.
So anyway, I like.
I want to join your team.
I like to use the word irregardless because it makes people angry and it's funny to me.
All right. So irregardless of all of that,
I forget what we were talking.
We're talking about if there was voter fraud.
Yeah.
Trump got elected because he brought the fight to the left, and people thought. The people that voted for him felt outcast during the Obama administration, ignored, abandoned middle America. But it was largely the left's fault. Trump fought back very aggressively the last 4 years. People loved him for it. But also, I think, it kind of waned on the everyday American. And I think there is a little desire just to get back to, quotations again, normal. People just want, let's just... breathe for a little bit. I have a feeling it's under there.
I get that desire because I have it as well.
It's unfortunate that our normal is growing the government, war on drugs, victimless crimes and imprisonment, more wars overseas. It's a crappy normal. We're just all going to look the other way and bury our heads in the sand. But that's technically that's the trade-off. If everyone's peaceful, we'll just keep doing what we've always done. That's not worked.
Right.
That's how I view it.
Yeah, and it's, going back to the question of respectability, I keep seeing people be like, well, Biden is presidential, and that's good. He'll be respectable. And As an anarchist, I don't like that because I don't think the government should ever be respectable. It just means that they're going to be able to get away with stuff that Trump couldn't get away with because, like, oh, look how polite he is, and he wears a nice suit, and he speaks well, and, you know, we let him get away with bombing hospitals in Iran because, you know, he seems like a good president. And, like, I think we should... The office of the presidency is fundamentally unrespectable because it is involved in all kinds of terrible criminal activity. And so if you have someone in there who is blatantly unrespectable, like Trump is, you know, everyone calls him out on it and says, hey, you're doing terrible things. But if you have someone in there who seems really, like, nice and professional and good, like Biden will, you know, which I don't know if he actually will, but people think he will, you're willing to let things slide that you otherwise wouldn't let slide. And I think that's a problem. So I want to undermine people's faith in government and the legitimacy of the presidency. And I think that might be something good that comes out of all this election nonsense. It's like, oh, we don't have any faith in our elections anymore, which seems like a bad thing. But maybe if we don't have any faith in our elections anymore, then people won't take what the president says so seriously.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point. I feel like we're so wrapped up in who's president. We're so wrapped up in we've lost faith in a lot of these institutions, but I'm like, we still are blaming the person that is put into these institutions. I'm like, maybe we need to shift the blame to the institution itself a little bit. Maybe the presidency has gotten too powerful. I mean, you hear it all the time. Yeah, maybe it has, but you hear it all the time where it's like, all right, design government. Okay, now your worst ideological enemy gets to hold all the seats of power. How would you design the government?
That's like the John Rawls veil of ignorance argument. Are you familiar with that?
No, I feel like I've heard it, but no, I wouldn't explain it to me.
It's this thought experiment that's supposed to justify socialism, essentially, but I don't think it does, where it's basically you're going to be born into the world, and you don't know in what situation you're going to be born into the world. You could be born in Africa, you could be born in Asia, you could be born to a poor family, you could be born to a rich family. You know, you have no idea what situation. You might be born with birth defects and deformities. So knowing that you have no idea what situation you're going to be born into, what system would you design for government or for society so that you'll have the best chance of being okay and succeeding, basically. And according to John Rawls, like, you would design a socialist system where the lowest people are taken care of and everything, because you might be on the lowest rung and you can't guarantee you getting to be an aristocrat or a millionaire or anything. I don't think it necessarily proves what he thinks it proves, but it's a political science thought experiment that's used in a lot of poli-sci classes.
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree with that either. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes, like, again, you're rolling the dice. I
would want a level playing field where there was social mobility and people could kind of choose their own destiny, which I don't think socialism offers. Yeah, I mean, that's what I want. I mean, your life, you fulfilled when you can achieve something yourself, work for something yourself, bear the fruits of your labor. Of course, this isn't a completely pull yourself up by your bootstraps society. There's people that help you and help guide you and, part of your circle of influence. But at the end of the day, you're like, I bled and sweat for my results here to the larger extent. And that's, something at the end of your life, because, we only have a set amount of time. That's something where you can say, like, all right, I did it, I gave it all I had, that you can, essentially die with satisfaction. Yes.
As morbid as that sounds.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
To reach the finish line and feel good about your performance.
No regrets.
Yeah.
Or is the famous tattoo, regrets, where the guy spells it wrong across his neck. That's what I tell my wife when she's mad at me for something. No regrets. More or less just to get myself in more trouble. Take the shovel and keep digging.
Yeah. You got to push the envelope sometimes.
That's how I live my life. Always push the envelope.
But I'm worried about more people self-segregating, and we have all these competing social media networks up, which I'm generally in favor of. I'm glad that more people are competing with Facebook and Twitter and stuff, but I'm worried that they're being labeled as Parler is being labeled as the conservative Twitter. So all the conservatives go to Parler and all the liberals go to Twitter, and it's now come out that Parler has started to kick people off.
Yeah,
they're the free speech platform, and they're starting to kick people off. So I don't know. So you're going to have Parler kicking off all the progressives and Twitter kicking off all the conservatives, and then everybody just is isolated in their own ideological bubbles, and I don't think that's particularly healthy.
Yeah, I saw that too, and you shared it in our little group chat. Where Parler is banning people for free speech.
I'm glad you say Parler, by the way, because I don't want to do this French nonsense. I'm going to say Parler from now on. I think it's supposed to be said parler, like the French word to speak.
That's dumb.
But parlor is better because it's like a parlor where you can gather together and speak.
Hooked on phonics, man. It's right there. Exactly. Parlor.
Yeah.
But
this is going back to our language conversation.
yeah, I know. It's like,
you don't have to pronounce it the way they tell you to pronounce it. Our friend Thomas Massey, the congressman, who cracked me up one time. We were in Vegas for Freedom Fest, and we were in one of the casinos, and it was the Paris, and we were in the Versailles room, and someone pronounced it Versailles and was like, "Oh, I shouldn't say Versailles, I should say Versailles." And he was like, "Why? You don't say Paris, you say Paris. Like, we're allowed to pronounce things the way we want to pronounce them." And there's Versailles, Kentucky, which I guess is why it's personal to him. But I agree with him completely. We don't have to say Paris, we can say Paris. We don't have to say parlay, we can say parlor.
Like New Orleans. You say that around from down there, you're wrong. It's Nolans.
Nolans.
Or I guess appropriately, New Orleans. But I want to ask you a question about that. When I saw, I was a little disappointed with Parler, but then I was like, complete free speech in a private area. Okay. My thought was around rules. Like, even private institutions do have rules. And I'm like, have both sides we've gotten too hung up on the rules, and then we veer over to no rules, and we can't understand that there's a healthy balance? Because this is just my thought, and let's work through this, or you push back.
Okay.
Because I think if you have just complete free speech, you might get like a 4chan or an 8chan, or just the dredges of society.
What's wrong with 4chan, man?
I actually have never been on it.
Beautiful chaos. I've never been on it.
I'm going on it,
but I sort of love it. I love the anarchy of it.
I was talking, actually, one of my friends, we'll go down a little tangent. He's actually a theology professor at a very Catholic college. And he was talking about 4chan. He's like, 4chan's wild. He's like, these are the people that will just share pornography, but then we'll all come together to literally find a missing child. They will just suddenly start sharing stuff, and they'll locate someone that has been abducted. So
Internet vigilantism is one of my favorite things. I guess it's kind of dangerous, but I sort of love it.
Yeah. But I was wondering, all right, so Parler isn't truly free speech as in everything goes.
Right.
They've set some standards that probably favor conservatives or right-leaning people, whatever. But I was like, is that bad necessarily? And then are we now falsely criticizing Facebook? Maybe Facebook's gone too far because they're unfairly applying their rules biasly.
It has to do with the rule of law versus the rule of men, right? It's okay to have some rules, and I don't fault Parler for having some rules, but you have to be very clear about what the rules are, and they have to be objective. And when you get into a position where the rules are vague and you have people kind of deciding when to enforce them and when not to enforce them, that's a problem, because then you get bias and you get discrimination, and people can be you shut down people you don't like and you keep people you do like. I mean, the rules should be the same for everybody. Everybody should be under the same standard. And I feel like all these sites, they have very general, vague rules about no obscenity, or well, what's obscenity?
Yeah, it leaves it open for the interpretation of the monitor or whoever that might be.
Right. Or when they say all these fact checking things on Facebook and Twitter now, they're like, no false information. Well, who's to say what's false? Someone's got to make that call, and people are going to disagree on what's true and what's false, and that's can be arbitrarily applied to different people. And so you end up with these. When someone like Facebook is overwhelmingly staffed by leftists, they're going to punish the conservatives. And someone like Parler that's staffed by conservatives, they're going to punish the progressives. And I think the rules just need to be very objective and spelled out. And so it's as little ambiguity and room for wiggle room as possible, so that people know, oh, I violated the rule. It says so right there. Yeah. I can't blame them for shutting me down. But if the rules are very vague, it makes it just so hard to have a fair system.
There's the Hayek quote, which Justin Amash has on his Twitter profile. That's why I just pulled it up. Laws must be general, equal, and certain.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I think Adam Smith in his Wealth of Nations hit on, in a variety of ways, that in a free society, laws should be few and very clear. Yeah. Everyone should know what they are. There shouldn't be, a ton of laws where I have no way of knowing if I'm breaking a law at any point. So it should be few and very easily understandable.
It's such a problem with the legal and regulatory code in the United States, because you have no way of knowing all the laws. There's too many to count. They've actually tried to count the number of regulations. They gave up. They can't do it. So you have no way of knowing if you're breaking a law. And then the police don't enforce every law because there's no way they possibly could. So that means they get to decide, and the courts as well, the district attorneys, they get to decide, do we want to enforce this law right now or not? And that just leaves so much room for abuse of power. And yeah, if you
show me the man and I'll show you the crime.
Exactly. It's the 3 felonies a day thing, right? That book was written where it shows that most people break 3 felonies a day without even knowing it, because you basically can't use the internet without breaking intellectual property law. It's pretty much impossible. So people can always come after you for something if they want to. And that's really dangerous.
We're going to have to do an episode on that too sometime.
Yes. Intellectual property is a particular interest of mine. I'd love to have a philosophical discussion with you about it.
Yeah, so the parlor thing, I'm a little torn on. I think both conservative, I mean, Facebook and Twitter have gone way off the deep end. There's no excuse for what they're doing. But I feel like the conservatives who are rightfully repulsed by what's going on and feel targeted also I'll say we because I kind of fall into that bucket, haven't fully formulated our philosophy or our understanding appropriately, because I think there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions, and because of that we're going to get some weird results. I feel like there's got to pause and actually think through some of this.
Yeah, I do think that there is a problem with a kind of a coherent, maybe this is true on the left as well, but I'm more familiar with the right, I guess. It's a problem with a sort of coherent intellectual philosophy of the right now, because it's sort of shifted right into a more of a nationalist, reactionary even philosophy. And it used to be a lot more individualistic and a lot more limited government. And I feel like with Trump, nationalism is sort of on the rise, and it's like, we don't identify people based on the individual anymore. We identify people based on the nation, which I think is a dangerous thing to do.
The most recent Deadly Isms episodes on nationalism.
We
released socialism first.
Yeah.
Then nationalism. But man, the angry comments on the nationalism one were interesting and fun to engage with at times.
Well, I mean, we tried to be clear that there's a difference between patriotism, which is love of your country, which is great. We think you should all love your country, and nationalism, which is the idea that your country is better inherently, or your countrymen are better inherently than other people from
by
other
just
countries.
Nature of where they were born.
Yeah, and it's just a geography problem, right?
Yeah.
And you shouldn't judge people based on where they were born. You shouldn't judge people based on the color of their skin. You shouldn't judge people based on the language they speak. Like, these are bad ways to judge people, because it's collectivist thinking. You're not looking at the individual. You're looking at an arbitrary characteristic of the individual and judging them based on that. So that's the problem with nationalism. And, there have been examples in history of nationalist societies that have gone very wrong and have resulted in great misery and death. And so we got to be careful with these sort of things. But that doesn't mean that we can't say America is the greatest country in the world, which I think it is. And we can't say that we don't love America, because I obviously love America. It's a fantastic country. But it just means I'm not going to say, you person from France, you're the terrible person because of your nationality, or whatever country you're from. I think it's a bad way to go down that road. And I think that, Trump, I wouldn't go so far as to call Trump a racist, because I really haven't seen that much evidence for that. A lot of people say that he's a racist, and I really just haven't seen the evidence for it. But I would certainly call him a xenophobe, because he definitely thinks other countries are bad, and he doesn't like trade with other countries. And he says, Mexico's sending all their worst people to us, and as if Mexico sends people. Like, people just come because they want to be here. So I don't agree with that kind of mindset.
Yeah, xenophobia has been kind of an American, part of our culture a little bit. We've always been scared of the new people showing up. The bad Germans, is why we had to start prohibition. If that's oversimplifying it a little bit.
Yeah.
The Irish Catholics, is why we had to start public schools so we could educate the Catholicism out of them. All that great stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, in fairness to America, I think that every society in history has been pretty xenophobic.
Yeah.
So it's not just us, but yes.
But we've also had the most influx of people from around the world because of the culture that we created, which is the land of opportunity.
Well, yeah. As a new nation where anybody can come from anywhere, you're going to get this melting pot thing, and it's natural that people are going to be resistant to that at first.
So, yeah, I feel like we've had to cross that bridge more than any other country. I don't think India or Ireland or Switzerland or Sweden has ever had to deal historically over the long run like America has, with so many people flocking in. They just... Whether that's good or bad,
you're seeing it now, though, in countries in Europe where they've basically opened immigration, and they have all these Middle Eastern populations come in. Like in the United Kingdom, they have so many people from Pakistan and India there, and a lot of the natives are very angry about it and really upset. And they're like, they took our gerbs, and but they're like just as bad as we are, if not worse, about that sort of thing. And I really think it's damaging. And it's, this whole idea we talked about before, this fight for your culture sort of thing. They think they can protect their culture by banning immigration. And I'm like, that's not the way to protect your culture. Celebrate your culture.
That's my biggest interest. And I won't go down that rabbit hole, but if I talk to any of my conservative friends, what do you really want? And what they want to is preserve certain values, certain traditions, patriotism. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like we conservatives, people on the right, have for a while now turned to the state as the means to do that. And in the long run, it undermines the whole mission. But
Yeah, I was going to say we were going to talk a little bit about what to expect from the Biden administration, and we sort of got off track. But one of the things he's going to do with his executive orders, which I fully agree with, there's very few things Biden's going to do that I agree with. But one of the things that I'm very positive on is he's going to reinstate DACA, which Trump got rid of and Obama created, which basically says if you came here as a child, as an immigrant and illegal immigrant, and you're like, you didn't have a decision-making process in crossing the border. Your parents brought you over here. You're in school. You're getting good grades. You don't have a criminal record. Like, we're not going to kick you out, which I think is great because it doesn't make any sense to me to kick those people out. They've been basically born and raised Americans, even though they weren't born here physically. They were brought here at a young age before they could even remember, and they're being good citizens and they're participating. I'm very pro-immigration in general. I think that immigrants bring a lot of, the more people you have in your country, the more opportunities you have for someone to do something great, someone to come up with a new invention or a new idea that's going to change the world. So I welcome people to come from other countries. And I think kicking people out who didn't even affirmatively choose to come here is stupid. So I'm pleased that Biden's going to reverse that. That's about the only thing he's going to do that I'm pleased about.
Yeah, I agree that I don't do well. Probably most conservatives would disagree with me in our current culture. I think we should increase immigration.
Yeah.
There's a very, it was a Nobel Prize winning economic theory, the endogenous growth theory, simply says the more people you have, the more wealth you have because you have the most important resource, the human mind. So you have more of it.
Well, yeah, and we should probably do a whole episode on immigration because it's a big topic, but people tend to think of immigrants or people in general as only consumers, and this is like between the population bomb theories. They're like, oh, people just consume resources, that's all they do, and so we got to limit the number of people. And actually someone just sent me a tweet the other day that was saying people were happy about COVID is stopping reproduction.
Yeah, I sent it.
Yeah, you sent that. So like this population control, right? We don't want people to reproduce under COVID so we can keep the population down. But like people aren't just consumers of resources, they produce resources as well. Everyone who's a consumer is also a producer. And so I think people overlook that side of the immigration debate where when you bring someone in from another country, they don't just get on welfare and suck up, the national resources. They get jobs and they produce things that are of value to other people. And maybe they'll invent something or maybe they'll, start a business that didn't exist before. And those are good things. So I'm in favor of all that.
Yeah, this is like the fixed pie theory. We always think there's a fixed pie, and if you have $10, it means you have somehow deprived me of that same $10. And it's the same with population. People that think that somehow we need to control population because too many people in the world, for centuries now, or at least the past 200 years, there's always been people saying, oh, we need to somehow control population. And every dictatorship has somehow tried to control population. In China, they had the one-child policy. And there was one country out of the Eastern Bloc where they actually started trying to require women to have 5 children. So it's been on both ends of the spectrum.
I think it was Hungary.
Was it Hungary?
I think Hungary was doing a tax incentive to really reward
That's currently
people
Hungary
for
is
having
rewarding,
extra children.
Which
I think
I'm
you
pro.
told me about that
I'm all
because you
about
wanted
that.
to have lots of children. So yeah.
Like 4 kids and you don't have to pay income tax
Yeah,
ever again?
I think that's right.
Done. Done. But
yeah, I'm going to use my favorite big word, Malthusians. The Malthusians believed that having more people was going to just destroy the earth and all the resources, and we were all going to starve to death because we become overpopulated. And what they overlooked is that people can adapt and people can come up with new ways of being more efficient and more productive and extracting more from less. The thing the environmentalists get wrong, we're in so many different topics today. The thing the environmentalists get wrong is they think that everyone wants to pollute. Pollution is what the big companies want to do, and we have to stop them from polluting. But pollution is, by definition, waste. It's inefficiency, right? If you're burning something and it's creating a byproduct that's going into the atmosphere, you're not using that to create energy. So, the incentive on everybody is to try to figure out ways to use resources more efficiently and create less pollution. And that's, why having these advances in science are so good, and allowing people the freedom to come up with these new ways of doing things have created the ability to get more from less. And that's why we've been able to sustain such a large population, is that our farms produce vastly more than they would have 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And we're able to feed a population that they didn't think we would be able to feed, when Malthus was alive.
Yeah, we have gone into a lot of topics, but this conversation has been good.
Yeah.
I feel like we definitely need to have a full immigration topic.
Just to alienate all of our audience.
Yeah, because I also have, I think there's always trade-offs.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the trade-offs, but I'm going to save that for another conversation. because we have gone down a lot of rabbit holes today, but it's been super enjoyable.
Yeah, well, I just want to end by saying that I hope we can unite as a nation and not all self-segregate and become in our own little silos and realize that, like, we're all people, we're all Americans, let's get along and like each other even though we disagree on what the role of government should be, because it's just ridiculous to create enemies like that. Because, you know, people like Tim Pool have been saying that civil war is coming, and I can't imagine anything worse than that. Like, I don't want civil war to happen. It will be really, really, really bad. We did it once. It was a bad idea. We don't need to do it again.
No. I don't think that this is a repeat of the American Civil War. This is a repeat of the 16th century, the 1500s, to be clear. But we can get into that later. This is just... We're just figuring things out. Technology's changing.
Yeah.
Cheers to cooperation.
Cooperation.
Less government.
We broke the 40-minute mark.
Whoa. I could have kept going.
We could have easily kept going, but I felt like we
at
needed
a certain point,
I
would have been like...
I was in the mood there where I could just keep talking.
Yeah, we could have gone another hour probably.
I was like, we're going to hit on everything. Because, the immigration one.
Yeah.
That actually will be a good episode.
Yeah.
Because I get a lot of pushback of, like, my one friend who is...
You only have one friend?